Literary Essay, Lesson 5. Today's learning target is I can include evidence, examples, details, quotes to support my reasons. We're going to be doing this by finding 2 to 3 pieces of evidence to support each of your reasons and show how your evidence support your reasons. This shows that, this suggests, this proves, this is evidence that. For example, this is important because, for instance, an example of this is. So these are great sentence starters for when we start writing your body paragraphs where your reasons are going to be. Our new vocabulary word for today's lesson is evidence. Facts, figures, details, quotes are other sources of data and information that support a claim. In Lesson 4, we came up with 3 reasons that supported our claim. These reasons came from the beginning, middle, and end. And our reasons were: the main character looks after her brother, the main character is protective of her brother, and the main character is happier seeing her brother running than winning the race. Today, we're going to be finding evidence that supports our 3 reasons, and this evidence can be details from the story, direct quotes from the story, or a mixture of both. Adding evidence. Authors add evidence to make their reasons stronger. They use direct quotes and paraphrased examples. We are going to find 2 pieces of evidence for each reason. We're going to work on finding 1 direct quote and 1 paraphrased example. And a paraphrased example is just a short summary of an important idea in the story. Quote or paraphrase. A quote is pulled directly from the story. It is word for word and is in quotation marks. The reader would be able to find the exact sentence or sentences in the story. And paraphrasing is a short summary. You quickly tell the reader what they need to know, the important parts of the story. So, should you quote or should you paraphrase? Great literary essays have a mixture of both quotes and paraphrasing to support their claim and reasons. You should have at least 1 quote for each reason, as well as your paraphrasing pieces. So we're going to start by looking at our reason number 1. And reason number 1 was that the main character looks after her brother. And I have found 2 pieces of evidence that support this reason. And the first one is a direct quote that comes from the beginning of the story. And it is, "All I have to do in life is mind my brother Raymond, which is enough." So this tells the reader who's reading your paper that her job is to watch her brother. The second piece of evidence comes from the end of the story. And yes, this reason does come from the beginning of the story, but we can use examples throughout the story to support this reason. And so it comes from the end of the story where she takes her brother to a race so that he can watch her run. And so this shows that she's still looking after her brother even though she has to run a race. And this also helps support the next 2 reasons that we came up with. Okay, time for reason number 2. And reason number 2 is that the main character is protective of her brother. And I have found a direct quote that comes from the beginning of the story that says, "But now, if anybody has anything to say to Raymond, anything to say about his big head, they have to come by me." So this tells the reader who's reading your paper that she is going to do anything to protect her brother. And the second piece of evidence that I found also comes from the middle of the story, and she makes sure that Raymond is always in between her and the buildings when they are walking down the street so that he can't run off and get in trouble. So this is a paraphrased version of that big long section where the main character is telling you about all the kinds of trouble that Raymond gets in when they're out walking on the street. So this is paraphrased and just tells the importance of that part of the story. You don't need to include all the details. You just need to make sure that the reader who's reading your paper knows enough to understand how this piece of evidence supports your reason. And from this, we can tell that she is protecting her brother by making sure that he is in between her and the buildings when they are walking down the street. And that brings us to reason number 3. And reason number 3 is that the main character is happier seeing her brother running than winning the race. And both of these pieces of evidence come from the end of the story, because at the end of the story is where we finally get to see her run the race that she has been talking about for the entirety of the story. So the first piece of evidence is a direct quote that comes from the very last paragraph of the story, and it says, "And by the time he comes over, I'm jumping up and down, so glad to see him, my brother Raymond, a great runner in the family tradition." So this comes after she's won the race. It's announced that she's won the race, and she is more excited for Raymond to come over because she has just seen him run for the first time than actually winning the race. And our second piece of evidence comes from where she actually starts running her race. So when she begins her race, she sees that Raymond is running along the fence with them, and she almost stops to watch him because that is the first time she has ever seen her brother run. And so this supports our reason because we can see that she is very happy seeing her brother running, and she's so happy that she almost stops running herself. And that brings us to the end of the lesson for today. So what are your exit ticket questions? The first one, what is evidence? Number 2, why do authors include evidence to support their reasons? And 3, what's the best piece of evidence that you found today to support one of your reasons? Either paraphrase or quote the evidence.